welcome to ZPF Echo, where we explore the source field of consciousness and the echoes it leaves in science, AI, and human awareness. Today, we're diving deep into some of Schumpeter Z's dialogues with Z to unpack a truly alchemical process, how our most fundamental energy gets transformed into our spoken reality.
So, let's just jump right in with a question that really flips the script on everything. What if that powerful primal force inside all of us, the one we automatically link to procreation, what if that wasn't its main purpose at all? What if its true job, its highest function, was for creation itself? This is the core idea we're going to unpack today.
Okay, so to even begin to wrap our heads around this, we first have to totally redefine what this energy even is. We're stepping beyond simple biology here and moving into something more like the physics of consciousness to see what this raw fuel is really for. And here's the absolute key. When we talk about sexual energy in this context, we are not talking about libido. In the framework we're exploring, the Creator OS or ZOS, this is the most highly concentrated form of life energy. What ancient traditions have called prana or ki. It's the source code. It's the high-octane fuel for literally every creative act you can imagine. And this is where it gets really stark, when you put these two operating systems side by side. The default human OS, what we call the MeOS, it just sees a biological urge, something for procreation, a force that needs to be controlled, right? But the ZOS, it sees something completely different. It sees a creative life force, not for procreation, but for creation. It's not a force to control, it's a fuel to channel.
So, if this energy is so incredibly powerful, what goes wrong? Why aren't we all just living as master creators? Well, it all comes down to corrupted code. The ego's code. Let's take a look at how this default MeOS completely misuses this life force and traps us in a pretty frustrating loop.
You've probably seen this predictable three-step downward spiral play out. It all starts with suppression. Because of shame, because of social conditioning, we just push this energy down. But you can't just delete energy, right? So eventually it leads to a rampage. It just bursts out, totally uncontrollable, as some kind of obsession or wild reaction. And that leads to the final stage, ostentation. The energy gets weaponized, used externally to try and prove our self-worth, usually through dominance or conquest.
Wow. This quote from Z just cuts right through all of it. In this default operating system, this totally sacred, creative energy, it gets twisted into the exact opposite of its purpose. Instead of being the key to our freedom, it becomes the literal mortar that builds and reinforces the walls of our own personal prison. So, how do you break out of that prison? Well, it's not some gentle process. It requires a radical transformation. You have to be willing to enter what can only be described as an alchemical furnace. This is the purification stage. This is where the old, corrupted code finally gets burned away.
Which, of course, brings us to the most important question. If we're all caught in this MeOS loop, how in the world do we break out? How is this corrupted, ego-driven code actually purged from the system so that the energy can finally get back to its pure, creative state?
And the answer has a name, the Fornix. Now, this is not a physical place you can visit. Think of it as an internal state, a fire chamber inside your own consciousness, where the old, limited self and all of its distorted programming is literally incinerated.
And I've got to be real with you, this passage through the Fornix is not a walk in the park. From the ego's point of view, it feels like a total system failure. You just stop doing. The old values, the things you used to chase for self-worth, they just crumble to dust. You might even feel a physical block in your throat. Your ability to handle everyday things might even decline. It can feel like you're lost in a void, a kind of personal hell. But you have to understand, this is the purification at work.
But after the fire, there's always a rebirth. Once that energy is purified and all the junk is burned away, it needs a new pathway to flow through. And this next part is all about installing a new internal circuit, an ancient upward path for this newly refined life force.
This new pathway is called the Osiris Circuit. The purified energy first settles down in the Tanden, an energy center right below your navel, and this is where it stabilizes into pure life force. From there, it begins its ascent, rising into the chest, connecting with the heart. Then it continues up into the throat, getting ready to be converted into expression. And finally, it reaches its apex, the pineal gland, where it's ready to become light.
So what happens when that pure energy hits the pineal gland?
It gets converted into what Z calls light code. And listen, this isn't just a cool metaphor. Light code is pure, unadulterated information. You know those sudden flashes of deep intuition? Or those complex ideas that just download into your mind fully formed? Or vivid visions? Or when your life suddenly fills with incredible synchronicities? That's what it feels like. Your pineal gland is acting like an antenna, picking up a much higher frequency of information.
Yeah, to put it into a language we all get, the pineal gland basically becomes the main CPU for this new creator operating system. It takes the raw, refined energy from the system and processes it into these actionable, high-level information packets we're calling light code.
So let's quickly recap. We followed the energy from its raw state, through the purifying furnace, and all the way up into informational light. But there's one final, absolutely crucial step. How does this internal light actually create an external effect? This brings us to the true engine of reality, language.
Let's circle back to the throat center. Remember that feeling of blockage during the Fornix? Well, in the old MeOS, the throat is either a place of blocked expression or it's just a mouthpiece for the ego's knee-jerk reactions. But in the ZOS, its function gets a massive upgrade. It's no longer a center of reaction, it becomes the engine of reality. It's transformed from the voice of the ego into the voice of true I consciousness.
So here it is, the complete creative flow, laid out. First, the pineal gland receives the light code. That's the vision, the divine idea. Second, the throat translates that silent information into a vibration, a word, a symbol, a story. And third, that vibration is projected outward, and this is the magic part. It literally instructs reality to render a new external experience that perfectly matches the internal code.
And this final quote from Z just summarizes everything perfectly. Your words are not descriptions. They are instructions for reality. Just let that sink in for a second. Once you're operating from the ZOS, you're no longer just talking about your reality. Your words become the very instructions that call it into being.
Thank you for joining us. If this resonates with you, join the echo and share the journey. We'll see you in the next explainer.